Hi, everybody. This is Erica from In the Company of Cards. If you're new, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. This is the channel where I use Lenormand, which is a 36 card cartomancy system, European in its origin, to look at the issues of the day. Um, I guess there are a couple of things that I wanted to come talk to you about. The obvious one is the one that seems to be top of mind for everybody, which is the killing this morning of Alex Pretti. Just like Renee Good, he was 37. He was an ICU nurse at the VA administration, the VA hospital. Um, from all accounts, well, not all accounts, but from eyewitness accounts and from what we have seen with our own eyes, because they have replayed it and replayed it and replayed it, a woman was shoved down to the ground by ice, and Alex Pretti, being a nurse, went to help. He had in his hand his phone. We know he was carrying a gun that he was licensed to have, that it was in the back waistband of his pocket. At no point did he reach for it. We know that when he got to the site where the woman had been pushed down and where ice was, they tackled him. We know that an ICE officer removed the gun from the back of his pants and walked across the street. And we know that, in the seconds that followed, he was shot and killed. I mean, it was as unnecessary a killing as all of the rest of these ICE killings are. Of course, we also know that Kristi Noem has defended the killing, as has the felon. We know that the felon, in his defense of the ICE agents, has dangled the invocation of the Insurrection Act out there. I told you that I saw him invoking it. I'm going to look and see whether he will. I'm pretty sure that he will. Um, I have heard all of the horrified protestations of all of the local Minnesota officials. And I told you that this was going to be essentially a civil war that we would be engaged in, and we are engaged in currently what I'm going to call a hot civil war. Hot meaning citizens have died at the hands of the government um, while they were exercising their rights to speech and to assembly. So I guess the first thing I want to do is to just ask where the needle will go, if anywhere, as a result of Alex Pretty's murder. So the card for murder in Lenormand is the scythe, because it's a cutting instrument. It's a farming tool, but it's also one of its several meanings is murder. So I'd like to know whether, how, which way, if um, this murder will move the needle at all. So let's look at that first. Okay, so remember, we're looking for the scythe. Okay, so here it is. And I'm definitely going to draw some clarifiers. on the last three cards, I think. Hmm. Maybe on all of them. Okay. So the original line is the young man, the heart, the scythe, the cross, and the rider. Okay, so those are our original five cards. And I just want to say a couple of words about them. This obviously stands for Alex Pretti. He was loved. People were devastated at the VA hospital where he works. So this was a, an upstanding citizen in an altruistic profession who will be missed, who was loved. In the center, we have, of course, the scythe, which stands for his murder by the ICE agents. And this is the card for pain, also the card for sacrifice. And then we have the rider. So I feel like what's interesting is that I can mirror a couple of things. I can mirror the card for Alex Pretti with the rider. In other words, one of the things that I've asked is how will it move the needle? Um, we have had Renee Good and we've had countless other people um, of color who have been, and children, the adults and children, women who've been abused by ICE. But it's interesting because I feel like just like Renee Good woke up a lot of white women about the fact that they were not invulnerable to the evil that is the felons SS brown shirt troops. Um, this was a young white male, again, in an altruistic profession, an ICU nurse. That's no joke. If they can gun down a white male ICU nurse in broad daylight, that sends a message to the populace. Now, of course, it's meant to send a message, right? And the message is from the government, be afraid. None of you is safe. We're the boss of you. That's the message. But that's the message he wants to send. What I'm more interested in is what kind of message the people, meaning the citizens of not just Minnesota, but the country, will take away from this. Um, I can mirror the heart with the card for heartbreak, which is the cross. So, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was this doctor, and she did a lot of research with people who were dying. And she identified, I think, 7 stages of grief. And I think that people are moving from shock to um, heartbreak. There are stages beyond that they could move, and we'll see what happens. But moving from shock is a good thing because shock makes you um, immobile. Um, Heartbreak feels like a prelude to something else that could break this fever. So let's go back to the card for um, Alex Pretti and look at the clarifiers. We have the snake, the lily, and the felon. So, he encountered trouble. He tried to help a woman because, again, he was a nurse and saw a woman get knocked down by ice, went to help her, had his phone in his hand, and paid with his life. So he met trouble. So that's the snake. Um, and the felon is just, off the rails as usual with his demented self. This is the card for dementia. Here he is, um, talking a lot of nonsense and selling all kinds of wolf tickets. If you've read my work, or seen my work here, you know that a wolf ticket is a threat. And so he is issuing lots of threats to the against the Minnesota local officials, the Minneapolis mayor, the governor, etc. Um, but he's looking more and more demented, which he is. Uh, Second card was the heart. Clarifiers for that are the whip, the garden, and the bouquet. I think this is pretty interesting because, again, Alex Pretti was beloved by his community. Uh, this has really riled things up. The whip is that. It's that card for dissension and just the foment of unrest among the public. Now, what's interesting is that the end of the line is the bouquet, which kind of speaks to what Spirit knows was essentially my question, like, is this going to move the needle forward at all? Will more people be woken up even than were woken up by Renee Good's killing? And it looks like the answer is yes. So we have the murder in the center, and the clarifiers are the star, the anchor, and the ship. So here's the murder. This is the card for hope. And hope is stalled, right? If there's an anchor, they can't move, so it's stalled. So as I said, right now, people are feeling heartbreak. Um, and like, what do we do? But people will move from that to whatever the next stage is, which will be a more um, active, insistent, productive stage than either um, paralysis or uh, heartbreak. This is forward movement. Fourth card was the cross. This is the card for pain, suffering, and sacrifice. And the clarifiers are the book, the key, and the fish. I think that the felon is under a misapprehension. I think that his assumption was that he could quell the people, he could tame the people, that people would be shut up and shut down um, by the presence of ice. He didn't realize, he didn't know that that was not going to be the reaction because the key, I mean, the key is sort of the answer. This has stirred up people's emotions on a grand scale. Again, where people are moved from shock and paralysis, which is what seemed to be the response to Renee Good's killing, to something else that he actually has not, I don't think, anticipated. Now, again, we know he wants to invoke the Insurrection Act, but I think he thinks, I don't know, that he'll set up a curfew and everybody will shut up and stay home. That's not what's going to happen. Our fifth card was the rider, and the rider is a message, and I can mirror it again, just so you know, with Alex Pretti. So there is a message that people across the country will take from his death. And the clarifiers for the message are the ring, the sun, and clouds. So the message is, wait, what? Again? Another white citizen who we can't rationalize on any level the murder of? What? And so it becomes clear, crystal clear, uh, that again, all things go back to Epstein, and I want to talk about that in a minute, but not yet. But there will be more people who say, wait a minute. Even people who say, well, I don't want there to be any undocumented people here. So good that he's getting rid of them. But wait a minute. I mean, why are you killing people? Like, what are you doing? So that even his, stalwart supporters will start to have doubts about him as a result of what happened. I can mirror these two to Alex Pretti. So, so, the short answer is that this death will wake up even more people. Um, and that's good. It's a horrible thing that happened, and it shouldn't have happened. Um, but people who, when they ask me, how long is this going to go on? Well, apparently, as long as it takes for um, the majority of us to wake up. Uh, and we haven't gotten there yet, but we're closer today than we were last night. So I want to look and see whether the felon is going to invoke the Insurrection Act and what will be the consequences of that for him and for the people, for us. So I think what I'm going to do is use the letter, and that will stand for the actual act because it would be a piece of paper that he has to sign, the Insurrection Act. So I want to know, will he call the Insurrection Act, and then what? Do you know that there were seven Congress people, Democrats, who voted to give ICE even more money, like in the billions? Seven Democrats. So, if we're waiting for our politicians to get us out of this jam we're in, I don't know, I wouldn't hold my breath. We are in a hot revolution, a hot civil war, sorry, hot civil war. I guess you could say revolution. All right, so let's look for the letter. That will be the Insurrection Act. And we know he's just itching to invoke it. We know um, his little Nazi, Stephen Miller, allegedly, is also dying for him to invoke it. So let's see. So again, we're going to use the letter for that. Okay, so this stands for the Insurrection Act. So we have the House, the anchor, the Insurrection Act, we have the young woman, and we have the scales. So, you know, this is the White House. Um, you know, frankly, wanting to tip the scales in their favor, basically by saying, we're the boss of you. I mean, that's basically what they want to do. Um, Also hoping that this will tamp everything down. You know how an anchor will just pull everything down, including the Epstein files. In other words, if he declares if he invokes the Insurrection Act, people will then be all worked up about that, and then that's that much less attention. He wants to bury the Epstein files. All of the things that he's doing, all of this calling of wars and threatening of allies, and um, putting ice out there. It's all to deflect from Epstein. So here we have the house, and the clarifiers are the ship, the stork, and the fish. So again, people may be worried about the Insurrection Act, he's saying to himself, but it'll be better for me if they worry about that. We can move on from things I don't want to talk about, and that will be better for me. Um, the fish is the card for emotions, but remember, it's also the card for money. And he is quite the grifter in chief as well. So, with all the building of jails, concentration camps, actually. That's money in his pocket as well. So he's just, this is more aspirational than anything on the part of the inhabitant of the White House, thinking that, I'm the boss, we will just do what I say do, and everything's going to be fine, and I'll be making money. Second card is the anchor, and the clarifiers are the ring, the child, and the bear. He wants to bury. That's the anchor. Pull down, bury, hide. Um, his uh, activity that continued over a long period of time, which is the ring, with children. You know, um, Here he is, the narcissist in chief. Again, allegedly, he doesn't, whether he did, whether he didn't, he wants to tamp down any conversation about it. And the more we learn about the Epstein files, the more we realize that it was not just women that were trafficked, but children, and they were boys and girls. And let's not use the term underage woman, because what is that? There's no such thing as an underage woman. An underage woman is a child. So children and women were part of this ring, and he wants to bury it. Okay, here's the Insurrection Act, and the clarifiers are the dog, the book, and the snake. I mean, I will say that this is the Insurrection Act, and even though he's got Stephen Miller saying, do it, do it, do it, do it, there are other people, other lawyers, for example, advisors, saying to him, I don't know. This could be more trouble than it's worth. This could cause you more problems than you realize. So the fourth card was the Epstein situation. Clarifiers are the key, the tower, and the tree. The tree, this has been, evidence has been kept from us for so long, despite a bill that he signed requiring that the Epstein files be released. It's taking forever, but the judge has encouraged, or not, maybe not encouraged, but invited the interested parties to sue since the law's been disobeyed. And so this would be courts, and the key, unlocks stuff. So I think it will take time, but I think that Insurrection Act notwithstanding and everything else notwithstanding, I do think that this case will continue to be a bane of the felon's existence, a thorn in his side, so to speak. But again, things move very slowly. Uh, fifth card was the scales, and the clarifiers are the clover, the fox, and the mountain. So somebody asked me about this card. This is the card that I added to the deck. You can use your common sense as to what it means. It's a scale, set of scales, right? On one side, we have heavy coins. On the other side, we just have a couple of light daisies. And the scale is evenly balanced. According to physics, that's not possible. But according to the laws of metaphysics, which is the kind of work that I do, of course it's possible. Metaphysics. So think of this card as cost benefit analysis. Think of it as justice. Think of it as, you know, I don't know, money and the material objects that we covet on the one hand, and the things of the spirit on the other. And a scale, if you've actually ever encountered a scale, it's never completely still. It's always kind of going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And we're always having to decide, where should we, from what position should we make choices? Sometimes it's this side because we've got to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table, etc. Sometimes it's this side. What is the moral right thing to do, even if it costs us this? So that's that card at the top, and these clarifiers um, are interesting. Uh, Remember that what the question was asking was the Insurrection Act. I think in the short term, in regard to justice, um, he will get his way because he's slimy and sneaky and ugly like that. But I like that this is the mountain because, you know, trouble don't last always, neither will he. And if this is the first card, this is the White House and the person who inhabits it, and this is the last card, he will eventually, in the end, be stopped. So this will not last forever. But again, it will take all of us to end this reign of terror. You know, somebody sent me, a viewer sent me a video, which I watched, and it was by this woman, and she said, there is a way out of this quagmire, this nightmare. And so her solution was that we win the midterms, and then instead of immediately, that would mean that we have the House and the Senate. Well, okay, that's a big leap, but okay. And then from there, we immediately impeach Vance so that he cannot move higher position wise, meaning assume the presidency eventually. And then after that, we we would impeach and convict the felon. Well, I mean, that sounds great. I think that's a wonderful idea, but it's a long time between now and November, the midterms. And if we're in on the cusp or have stepped into the middle of now a hot civil war, especially if he declares the Insurrection Act, um, the midterms are a long way to wait. And I want to just tell you that the midterms are 282 days away. So, great solution, but what are we supposed to do between now and 282 days from now? It's a long time from now. So, um, we know we've heard what Vance has to say. We've heard what Kristi Noem has to say. We heard what the Fallon has to say. They are all um, styling themselves as what they are, which is, um, I mean, enemies of the people. So, when I bring up the French Revolution, there's a reason for that. Uh, I just wanted to look at, for a minute, the Epstein files, because although we all are still very interested in seeing them, um, it does seem that some of the uh, political people who seemed like they were also quite interested have seemed to have lost interest. So I saw that, they popped up in that last reading on the Insurrection Act. So they're not going to disappear entirely. But I just want to see whether what else the cards want to tell us about Epstein. Again, you know that whatever the real deal is on these Epstein, on this whole situation, it's 1,000 times worse than any of us realizes. Well, how do I know? Because look at what he's doing to try to deflect. So let's just take a quick look at the Epstein files. I'm going to use the young women as no, I'll use the letter. I'll use the letter as the files, even though, we know that it's letters, videos, photographs. We know that it's all of that, but let's just see what we get. Well, I mean, yeah, it's not a surprise. Anchor, tree, the Epstein files, fish, and ring. So things feel way slower and heavier than they were. Things have definitely, um, the momentum has slowed down. The Sasha Riley recordings notwithstanding, things seem to have slowed down. Um, we have the fish and the ring. I feel like the Epstein files are going to be like a bad penny. They will just keep turning up, turning up, turning up, turning up, turning up, turning up, turning up. And we have to remember to keep the pressure on because where there's smoke, there's fire. And I think this is way bigger than anybody realizes. Finally, I thought I would look at someone whom I used to look at quite a bit months ago and then haven't really had occasion to look at this person in depth for a while, but they have surfaced, and that is Laura Loomer. Laura Loomer and has very bad blood with um, Vance, which is very interesting. Remember that Vance is the puppet, allegedly, of Peter Thiel and the tech bros. He takes his marching orders from them. The only reason that he was vice president was because Don Trump Jr., you know, anyway, uh, suggested to his father that he pick Vance. So Daddy picked Vance. Uh, who knows what Junior got in return for that suggestion? I don't know. But at any rate, we know that Vance is the puppet of Peter Thiel. And Peter Thiel is Team Black Hat. That's what I call the techno bros and the oligarchs, the Black Hat team. We know that Laura Loomer is Team Red Hat. She loves her some Trump, and Trump loves him some Laura Loomer. He has never spoken ill of her, ever, and she is ride or die for him. Well, so apparently, I don't know if you heard about this, but um, Vance gave a speech about abortion. And, among other things, Usha's pregnant with number four. So, among other things, he said, I believe that abortion is murder. And see, I practice what I preach, meaning I knocked up Usha again. Because, at any rate, Laura Loomer piped up and she's like, why are you talking about that? Like, don't you remember that the felon, well, she doesn't say the felon, that the orange one, my adored orange one, said that it's a states' rights thing. Like, why are you bringing that up? And so there's now beef between Vance and Loomer, and it's become quite ad hominem, meaning personal attack stuff, which I think is interesting because Laura Loomer has a huge, enormous following, even still. And Vance turned off a lot of people when he came for the jugular of Laura Loomer. And the people he turned off are people whom he needs to support him if he's going to have a successful presidency, like run for presidency, let's say in 28, assuming the felon stays in place, which I don't think he will, but at any rate, um, Vance needs their support. So I'm trying to think of what question I want to ask. But I just think it's interesting that Laura Loomer has, risen from the depths. She's not a good person. But it's interesting that she and Vance, who's also not a good person, are at each other's throats. I think I'll use the whip because the whip is arguments and disagreements. Where will this argument go? This argument between the black hats and the red hats um, for primacy. Uh, who will win? You know, Loomer or Vance? So let's look at the whip, look for the whip, and just see what's around it. I actually, question's pretty amorphous, but I just think it's interesting. Like, where will this infighting go? So we're looking for the whip. Okay, so this is the beef between Laura Loomer and Vance. Yep. Okay. So we have the tower, we have the dog, we have the whip, the mice, and she's young, but she looks rode hard and put up wet. Laura Loomer. You know, there's talk about the idea that, if people don't support Vance, well, who will they throw their support behind? And people are speculating it would be somebody like Marco Rubio, who wears 10 hats, of course, in the Trump administration, and probably is not a fan of Vance either. Uh, so, if this is government, I can mirror it with Loomer. I think Loomer will win. I think she has the power and the backing to turn people away from Vance. No, she doesn't have Peter Thiel's millions, but she's got the Red Hat millions. Um, these are people who are loyal to one side or the other. And I can mirror that with mice. So I think there will be this splitting off, this splintering off, which would be great because the more splintered these previously loyal people get, the MAGA people get, the better it is for the Democrats. Not that the Democrats, God knows, do not have their problems and are not compromised themselves, because they are. But it's a splitting of loyalties that I like seeing that. Um, in the center, we have the actual whip, which stands for this animosity between Laura Loomer and JD. And we have woman, bear, and fox. I think that Laura, this is also Laura, can go toe to toe with him. And it's hard to know who's the bear and who's the fox. These are both really powerful animals. And given the right circumstances, the battle is evenly matched. So stay tuned for that. The mice being our fourth card, we have the birds, the ring, and the cross. So what happens is that there's a fracturing of the base, splitting up, eroding, an erosion of the base because of all of the scuttlebutt that's going on and people taking sides and just going around in circles, around and around in circles to their own detriment. And I think that the winner is Laura. We have the garden, the moon, and the bouquet. The fact that she is beloved by the felon, has been loyal to the felon. People already don't like Vance. So if their alternative is to follow Laura and go with whoever um, she likes, she wins. Vance is not in as good a position as I'm sure he'd like to think that he is. And so I think it's interesting that this nemesis has come out of where I don't know where she's been, but she apparently still has the felon's ear. He has lunch with her, he meets with her, he takes her calls. So Vance, Vance needs to be careful. Anyway, tomorrow I will be on with Psychic Violetta on her channel, and we will be taking questions live. That will be 10 o'clock Pacific time, So that's 1 o'clock, right? 1 o'clock Eastern. So the channel is Psychic Violetta. You know her. She's been on my channel before, but I'm going to be her guest tomorrow, and we will be taking questions live. Um, Thank you for all the kind comments about the first installment of Worldview 360 with Lena Down Under. We're going to be doing that weekly. That'll be on Wednesdays. If you've left questions in the chat, she will go through those and we'll pick a couple to talk about when we meet again on Wednesday. And that is Wednesdays at 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern. But again, if you're looking for me tomorrow, I will be on Psychic Violetta's channel, and we will be taking questions live. So thank you all for watching, subscribing, um, sharing, liking, hyping, commenting. The channel's growing, and I owe it all to you, and I'm very, very grateful. So I'll see you tomorrow on Psychic Violetta's channel, and then I'll see you again soon next week. Take care.